President Joe Biden, gosh, what's the word? I guess if I put this into a YouTube title form, I would say destroyed, wrecked, demolished Senator Rick Scott over the issue of Medicare now being able to negotiate drug prices because of the Inflation Reduction Act. And I'm going to walk you through his statements on this, starting off not directed at Rick Scott, and then we'll get to the Rick Scott angle. But it highlights such a crucially important part of the Inflation Reduction Act and the dishonesty of people like Rick Scott, and the fact that people like Rick Scott stood against the Inflation Reduction Act that is doing something as he outlines here.
Ben and I have a lot of been fighting for years to allow Medicare the power to negotiate how much they'll pay for the drugs they need to apply for Medicare. We've been working like hell. We finally beat pharma. Ben and I have a lot of been fighting for years.
I think the fight continues. Hopefully that's what he means. But this was a win over Big Pharma for sure. And then specifically directed towards Senator Rick Scott.
You saw when I said that on the floor, maybe if you saw it, you saw when I said that on the floor, I said, no, liar, hey, I said, that means you're not going to cut Medicare or Social Security? And they all stood up and started to clap. I said, well, we got to settle then. Remember? No, seriously. Well, it's all on film. Let's see who votes to cut it. Look, and here's Rick Scott's response to this. He says that because I'm cutting prescription drug costs, that means I'm cutting Medicare. Where's he been? I think he's a little confused.
So Rick Scott is confused indeed. And before I go through once again why Rick Scott on the issue of Medicare negotiating prescription drug costs, and Rick Scott using that to say that actually it's the Democrats who are cutting Medicare, let me give you an example of him telling this lie.
By the way, the Democrats just cut $280 billion out of Medicare back in September. All right, and every Democrat voted for it. Joe Biden signed it. So this is just political gotcha up here. But look, I am going to focus on representing my state. There's a lot of Medicare recipients, Social Security recipients, and I'm going to do everything I can to preserve those programs.
Well,
I mean, when I come across Rick Scott, first word that comes to mind is likable. That is a likable guy right there. So what is he talking about? The figure that he's referring to, $200 billion, is the projected amount that will be saved because Medicare is going to negotiate drug prices. So Big Pharma won't be able to won't be able to price gouge us as much as they have been. They still will price gouge us, but not as much because of this part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And Rick Scott is saying, because we're not going to have to spend as much money as a government and thus as taxpayers, that's actually the Democrats cutting Medicare, which when you say cutting Medicare, no one thinks, oh, you mean like cutting the expenses in a way that won't decrease benefits, but will save us money. No, it brings the image to mind of cutting the benefits, right? That's not what's happening. That is so dishonest. So he's, with the tone of voice that he's putting forward, making clear what he's referring to is something he's against. So and in his, voting record as well. So make clear to the American people, you prefer they pay $200 XYZ billion more, at least Medicare recipients, for no reason, just because you don't want Medicare to be able to negotiate drug prices and instead want that money to go in the pockets of Big Pharma and their profits. Say that explicitly. No, instead it has to be, actually, it's the Democrats cutting Medicare, and I'm not the bad guy for proposing the plan that explicitly says all federal programs should sunset every 5 years, which would put into jeopardy Medicare and Social Security. It's actually the Democrats who are bad for saving all of us money without cutting benefits. Truly despicable, I tell you. Let me get the camera. There we go. End of segment. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before all the clips are uploaded to YouTube, plus get the full bonus show every single Saturday, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Luke Beasley. That's patreon.com/Luke Beasley. Link in the description.